The check was for $20,000, but my mother called it a prop. She actually laughed, insisting I hand it over so she could shred it before I embarrassed our family by trying to cash a fake. But as I traced my grandfather's shaky signature, I realized this wasn't a prank. It was an exit strategy. I didn't give it to her. I deposited it instead. And when the funds cleared the next morning, the screaming started. The cardboard box sat on the dining room table, smelling of dust and cedar. It was the smell of my grandfather's closet, a scent that used to mean safety, but now just meant paperwork. My mother, Lorraine, was in the kitchen aggressively polishing silverware that didn't need polishing, the metallic clinking providing a sharp, rhythmic soundtrack to my sorting. I was 33 years old, a senior logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping firm, and yet, in this house, I was treated like a summer intern who couldn't be trusted with the stapler. "You are doing a fine job. Stella," my mother called out from the kitchen, her voice bright and brittle. "Just make sure you put the tax documents in the blue folder. The blue one, not the green one. Do not confuse them like last time." I hadn't confused them last time. She had moved them, but I didn't say that. I just kept sorting. The doorbell rang, cutting through the tension. I stood up, grateful for the interruption, and walked to the foyer. Through the frosted glass, I saw the silhouette of a uniformed courier. When I opened the door, the heat of the late afternoon rushed in, clashing with the aggressive air conditioning my mother insisted on keeping at 68 degrees. "Delivery for the estate of Harry Jenkins?" the courier asked. I signed for it. It was a thick, padded envelope from First National, the bank my grandfather had used for 40 years. "Who was that?" my mother asked as I walked back into the dining room. She had the silver polish rag still in her hand, a gray smudge on her thumb. "Bank stuff." I said, "Probably more statements." I sat back down and tore the tab on the envelope. Inside, there wasn't a stack of statements. There was a smaller, white legal envelope with my name typed on the front. Not the estate of Harry Jenkins, just Stella Jenkins. My heart did a strange, heavy thump against my ribs. I slid a finger under the flap and pulled out the contents. It was a single piece of paper, clipped to a rectangular slip of heavy stock. I looked at the heavy stock first. It was a cashier's check. The watermarks caught the light. Shifting from green to gold, I read the numbers twice. Sure, I was seeing it wrong. Paid to the order of Stella Jenkins. Amount: $20,000 and 0 cents. My breath hitched. I stared at the remitter line. It didn't say Harry Jenkins. It listed a trust account number I didn't recognize. Something generic. I looked at the date. It had been issued 3 days before he died. Behind the check was a note on his personal stationery, the cream-colored kind with his initials embossed at the top. The handwriting was his, unmistakable in its jagged, leaning slant. It wasn't a sentimental goodbye. It wasn't a poem. It was instructions. "Use this to finish what you started. Don't ask your mother." I felt a flush of heat crawl up my neck. Finish what you started. I knew exactly what he meant. 7 years ago, I had been accepted into a specialized certification program for supply chain management, a step that would have moved me from logistics coordinator to director level within a year. It cost $18,000. My mother had told me there was no money in the family education fund, that things were tight, that I was being selfish for asking when Grandpa's health was declining. I had declined the offer. 2 months later, my mother had bought a new luxury sedan. "What is that?" My mother was standing right behind my chair. I hadn't heard her approach over the humming of the air conditioner. I instinctively covered the note with my hand, leaving the check exposed. "Just something Grandpa left," I said, my voice sounding thinner than I wanted it to. She reached over my shoulder, her fingers smelling of chemical polish, and snatched the check from the table before I could stop her. "Hey," I said, grabbing for it. She held it up to the light, her eyes narrowing. She didn't look surprised. She looked annoyed. "Oh, for heaven's sake," she said, letting out a sharp, dismissive laugh. "He actually kept this?" "What do you mean?" I asked. "Give it back. Stella, don't be ridiculous." She flicked the corner of the check with her fingernail. It made a crisp, authoritative sound. "It is a prop." "A prop?" I repeated. "Yes, a prop." She tossed the check back onto the table as if it were a used napkin. You know how his mind was at the end. He got into that phase where he wanted to feel like a big shot again. He had these printed up to carry around in his wallet. It made him feel important to think he could just hand someone $20,000. I looked at the check again. It had a wet signature from a bank officer. It had security features. It looked incredibly real. "It's a cashier's check." "Mom," I said, "you have to pay for these up front. The money has to be there." She rolled her eyes, walking back toward the kitchen. "It is a novelty item." "Stella, honest to God, you are so gullible. If you take that to the bank, they are going to laugh at you, or worse. They will call the police for trying to pass a counterfeit instrument. Do you want to go to jail because Grandpa was having a senile episode?" I looked at the note again, still hidden under my hand. "Don't ask your mother. I don't think it's fake," I said quietly. She stopped in the doorway. Her posture changed. The frantic energy of the polishing vanished, replaced by a cold, statue-like stillness. "Excuse me?" she said. "I picked up the check. I think it's real, and it's made out to me." "Stella," she said, her voice dropping into that low, reasonable tone she used whenever she was about to crush me. "You always do this. You find some little scrap of drama and you blow it up because you want to feel special. It is a fake check. It is trash. Now, give it to me so I can put it in the shredder with the rest of the junk before we look like idiots." She held out her hand, palm up, expectant. For my entire life, that hand had been the law. When I was 10 and found a stray kitten, that hand had demanded I give it over to be taken to the shelter. When I was 16 and found a diary I thought was private, that hand had demanded I surrender it for inspection. I looked at the check. "Finish what you started." I stood up. I slid the check into the back pocket of my jeans. I folded the note and put it in my bra, a reflex from high school. "No," I said. Her eyes went wide. It wasn't anger yet. It was shock. The vending machine had refused to dispense the product. "What did you say to me?" I said no, I repeated, grabbing my purse. "If it's fake, then the bank will just tell me it's fake. No harm done." "You are not taking that to the bank," she hissed, stepping toward me. "You are going to embarrass this family. Do you know who works at First National? The branch manager is Bill Henderson. I play bridge with his wife. You walk in there with a counterfeit check from my dead father, and I will never hear the end of it. Give it to me. I'm going home." "Mom," I said, moving around the table to put distance between us. "Stella!" she shouted. I walked to the front door. My heart was hammering so hard I felt dizzy. I never defied her, not on big things. I argued about appetizers or movie choices, but never about money or reputation. "You walk out that door with that paper." She called after me, her voice trembling with something that sounded like genuine fear. "And you are proving exactly why Grandpa didn't leave you anything in the will. You are erratic." The words stung, landing exactly where she meant them to. Erratic. That was her word for me. Responsible when she needed errands run. Erratic when I had an opinion. I didn't turn back. I opened the door, stepped out into the heat, and closed it behind me. I drove straight to my apartment, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The check burned in my pocket. When I got inside, I took it out and laid it on my kitchen counter. I turned on every light in the apartment, as if brightness could reveal the lie in the paper. It looked perfect. I didn't sleep that night. I sat up researching cashier's check security features, microprinting, watermarks, heat-sensitive ink. I held the check up to a light bulb. I saw the faint chain-link pattern in the paper. By morning, I was exhausted, but my resolve had hardened into a cold, heavy knot in my stomach. I called in late to work. I put on my best blazer, the navy blue one I wore for client meetings, and drove to the bank. Not the branch near my mother's house. I drove 3 towns over. To a branch where nobody played bridge with anybody I knew. The bank smelled like coffee and floor wax. It was quiet. I waited in the velvet-roped line. Clutching my purse so tightly my knuckles turned white. I kept expecting my mother to burst through the glass doors, pointing a finger, shouting that I was a fraud. Next, please. The teller was a young man with a neatly trimmed beard and a name tag that said, David. He smiled politely. How can I help you today? I tried to keep my hands steady as I slid the check across the marble counter. I also handed him my driver's license and my debit card. I would like to deposit this, please, I said. David picked up the check. He didn't laugh. He didn't frown. He turned it over. Endorse the back for me? He asked, sliding it back. I blinked. That was it? No sirens? No accusations? I signed the back, my signature looking loopier than usual because of my shaking hand. I pushed it back to him. He typed something into his computer. He picked up the check again and fed it into a small scanner. It made a mechanical whir-click sound. I held my breath. This was the moment. The machine would beep. Red lights would flash. David would look at me with pity and tell me I was a gullible daughter of a senile old man. The machine didn't beep. David looked at his screen, typed a few more keys, and then opened his drawer. You have a hold on this for 1 business day since it is over $5,000. David said casually, so $5,000 is available immediately, and the remaining $15,000 will be available tomorrow morning. Is that all right? I stared at him. It's real? I whispered. David looked up, confused. Excuse me? The check, I said, my voice gaining a little strength. It cleared? It's good? David looked at the check again, then back at his screen. Yes, ma'am. It is a cashier's check issued from this bank. Funds are guaranteed. It is as good as cash. Here is your receipt. He handed me a slip of paper. Current balance, $23,412. I took the receipt. I felt a wave of relief so profound my knees actually buckled a little. I had to grab the counter to steady myself. Are you okay? David asked. I'm fine, I said. I am really fine. Thank you. I walked out of the bank into the bright morning sun. The world looked sharper. The cars looked shinier. The air felt cleaner. It wasn't a prop. Grandpa hadn't been senile. He had been strategic. Don't ask your mother. He knew. He knew she would try to take it. He knew she would lie. I sat in my car and cried for 5 minutes. Not happy tears, but a release of tension that had been building for 24 hours. Then, I drove to work. The day passed in a blur. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched, but I didn't check it. I knew who it was. By the time I clocked out at 5, I had 12 missed calls and 14 text messages from my mother. I sat in the parking lot and scrolled through them. 10:15 a.m. Stella, please call me. I am worried I was too harsh yesterday. 11:30 a.m. I just don't want you to get in trouble. Please bring the check by the house. 12:45 o.m. Are you ignoring me? That is incredibly childish. 2 p.m. Pick up the phone. 3:30 p.m. I am your mother and I am trying to protect you. 4:15 p.m. You love making scenes, don't you? You love the drama. I put the phone down. I didn't reply. I went home, made a sandwich I couldn't taste, and went to bed early. The next morning, I woke up to a notification from my banking app. Deposit cleared. $15,000. Available balance, $23,412. It was done. The money was mine. I was pouring coffee when my phone rang again. It was my mother. This time, I answered. Hello? Stella. Her voice was shrill, tight with an emotion I couldn't quite place. Where have you been? Why haven't you answered me? I was at work. Mom, did you do it? She demanded. Did you deposit that thing? Yes, I said calmly. I deposited it yesterday. There was a silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence. Then, a sound I had never heard from her before. A sharp intake of breath that sounded like terror. You deposited it? Yes. And it cleared this morning. It wasn't a prop. Mom, it was real. No, she said quickly. Too quickly. That is impossible. It is in my account. I said. Stella, listen to me, she said, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. I just got a call. From the bank. I frowned. From the bank? Yes. Someone from the fraud department. They called the house looking for you because they didn't have your current number. They said you tried to deposit a counterfeit check, and they are opening an investigation. They said if you return the funds immediately, they might not press charges. I stood perfectly still in my kitchen. The morning sunlight hit the granite countertop. Mom. I said slowly, I deposited the check at a branch in Oakville. My address on my account is this apartment. My phone number on my account is my cell phone. Why would they call your landline? Because it is a family account. She was grasping. Her voice was climbing an octave. Stella, do not argue with me. You are in serious trouble. You need to withdraw that money right now. Cash. Stella, get it in cash so we can return it to the estate account, and bring it to me. I can fix this. But you have to bring it to me now. I felt a coldness settle over me. It wasn't the cold of fear anymore. It was the cold of clarity. She was lying. She wasn't just lying. She was desperate. A bank wouldn't call a parent for a 33-year-old woman's deposit. A bank wouldn't ask for cash to return to the estate. That wasn't how banking worked. That was how panic worked. Who called you? I asked. What was their name? I didn't write it down. Officer. Something. Stella, stop questioning me. I am trying to save you from prison. I looked at the coffee in my mug. It was perfectly still. I'm going to go to the bank and clear this up then. I said, no, don't go back there. Just bring the money to me. I have to go. Mom, I have a meeting. Stella. I hung up. My hand was shaking again. But not from intimidation. I was shaking because the world I thought I lived in had just cracked open. My mother wasn't protecting me from a fake check. She was terrified of a real one. Why? Why was $20,000 such a disaster? My parents were comfortable. They lived in a paid-off house in a good neighborhood. My father had a pension. My mother drove a Lexus. $20,000 was a lot of money, but it wasn't life-changing money for them. It shouldn't cause this level of hysteria. Unless it wasn't about the money, I needed to talk to someone sane. I texted Maya, a senior analyst at my logistics firm. Maya was the kind of person who kept spreadsheets for her grocery shopping. She didn't do drama. Emergency lunch? I texted, tacos, 12:30, meet me at the truck. She replied instantly. 2 hours later, we were sitting on a concrete bench near the food trucks. Shielding our tacos from the wind, I told her everything. The box, the check, the note, the prop story, the deposit, and the phone call this morning. Maya chewed slowly, staring at a pigeon pecking at a crumb near her shoe. She swallowed, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and looked at me. Okay, let's look at the data, she said, her voice calm and professional. Fact 1. The check cleared. Banks don't accidentally clear $20,000. If it was fake, it would have bounced, or they would have confiscated it immediately. Right, I said. Fact 2. Your mother is lying. Banks do not call the mother of the account holder to threaten prison. That is not a procedure. That is a bad Lifetime movie script. I nodded. I knew that, but hearing Maya say it made it solid. So, Maya continued, gesturing with her taco, the variable here is the motivation. Why lie? Why panic? If it was just about you being embarrassing, she would be angry, not scared. You said she sounded scared? Terrified. I said, like she was hyperventilating. Maya took a sip of her soda. People get terrified when they are losing control, or when they are about to get caught. Caught doing what? I asked. I don't know, Maya said, but $20,000 isn't just money. It's a paper trail. Cashier's checks have remitter lines. They come from specific accounts. The remitter line, I whispered. I remembered the text on the check. It wasn't my grandfather's personal account. It was a trust name, the H.J. Legacy Holdings Trust. I never heard of that trust. I said. Maya raised an eyebrow. Well, someone has. And if your grandfather gave you a check from it 3 days before he died and told you not to tell your mother, it means he knew she wouldn't want you to have it. She paused, looking at me with serious, dark eyes. Stella, if that check came from a hidden account, depositing it might have triggered a notification. Not to you, to the other people on the account. My mother? I asked. Maybe, Maya said. Or maybe she just knows that if you start pulling on this thread, the whole sweater unravels. She crumpled her foil wrapper. Look, you have the money. It's yours. But if I were you, I wouldn't just spend it. I would use it to buy some information. What do you mean? I mean, go look at the public records. Maya said, if there is a trust, there might be filings. If there was a business, there are records. Find out what HJ Legacy Holdings actually is, because your mother isn't acting like a grieving daughter. She is acting like a CEO trying to cover up an embezzlement. I felt a chill despite the midday sun. Embezzlement. It was a heavy, ugly word. She's my mother, I said weakly. Maya stood up and brushed crumbs off her skirt. Exactly. Which is why she knows exactly which buttons to push to make you stop looking. Don't stop looking. I walked back to my office, but I couldn't focus on shipping manifestos. I sat at my desk, staring at the dual monitors. Finish what you started. I thought about the certification program I never took. I thought about the way my mother always handled the finances, how my father just nodded and signed where she told him to. I thought about the scholarship I supposedly lost in college, the one that forced me to take out loans my mother graciously helped me manage. I opened a new browser tab. I typed in the Secretary of State's website for business entities. I wasn't going to fight my family. I hated conflict. I hated the idea of a war. But I wasn't going to be a prop either. I typed Jenkins into the search bar. Then I deleted it. I typed HJ, Legacy Holdings. I hit enter. The screen loaded. I needed to know why $20,000 was an emergency siren. I needed to know what my grandfather was trying to tell me. And I needed to know why my mother was so afraid of the truth. I clicked on the first result. I sat at my desk at work, the glow of the dual monitors illuminating my face. But I wasn't looking at shipping routes or customs declarations. I was staring at a high-resolution JPEG of the cashier's check. Most people didn't know you could request an image of a deposited item from your online banking portal. But in logistics, you learn to track every scrap of paper. I zoomed in on the top left corner, past the watermark, to the remitter line. When I had held the physical check in my hand, my adrenaline had been pumping so hard I had only registered my own name and the amount. But now, in the cold, fluorescent quiet of the office, I looked closer. Remitter, H.J., Legacy Holdings, Trust. The name sat there, innocuous and bureaucratic, but it scratched at something in the back of my memory. H.J. was obviously Harry Jenkins, my grandfather. But Legacy Holdings? My grandfather hadn't been a tycoon. He had run a modest property management firm called Jenkins Associates for 30 years before selling his share and retiring to his garden. I opened a new tab and navigated to the Secretary of State's business entity search. I felt a pang of guilt, the kind that had been programmed into me since childhood. The feeling that asking questions was a form of betrayal. I pushed it down. I typed H.J. Legacy Holdings. The result popped up instantly. It was an active trust, registered 12 years ago. The registered agent was a law firm I didn't recognize in downtown Seattle, but it was the filing history that made me pause. The trust had been formed exactly 1 month after Jenkins Associates was dissolved. I leaned back in my chair, the mesh digging into my shoulders. The family story, the one my mother told at every Thanksgiving and Christmas, was that Grandpa had gotten too old to manage the stress of the business. She said his partner wanted to expand, and Grandpa just wanted to rest. So they sold the company amicably, and Grandpa put the proceeds into safe. Boring bonds. But according to these filings, the company hadn't been sold. It had been dissolved, and immediately replaced by this trust. Why hide a corporate restructure behind a retirement story? I needed to talk to someone who was there. I couldn't ask my father. He would just tell my mother I was asking. And then the screaming would start. I couldn't ask my brother, anxious and avoidant. who lived 3 states away and pretended our family was normal. I thought of Mrs. Gable. Evelyn Gable lived 3 streets over from my parents' house. She and her late husband had been my grandfather's closest friends. They had played pinochle every Friday night for 20 years. Mrs. Gable was 82 now, sharp as a tack, but physically frail. She had been there when the business closed. She would know. I left work early, claiming a migraine. It wasn't entirely a lie. The pressure behind my eyes was building, a throbbing reminder of the stress cocktail I was drinking. Mrs. Gable's house smelled of lavender and old paper. It was a time capsule of the 1990s, filled with ceramic figurines and heavy drapes. She welcomed me with a surprise that seemed genuine, though her eyes darted to the window as if checking for my mother's car. "Stella, dear," she said, pouring tea into a cup so delicate I was afraid to hold it. "To what do I owe the pleasure? We haven't seen you since the funeral." I took the tea. "I wanted to see how you were doing, Mrs. Gable, and I had a question about Grandpa." Mrs. Gable's smile didn't fade, but it froze. It became a picture of a smile rather than the real thing. She set the teapot down with a clatter. "Oh?" she said. "I found something." I said, keeping my voice soft. "A check from a trust called H.J. Legacy Holdings. Do you know what that is?" She looked at her hands. They were spotted with age, the skin translucent. She smoothed her skirt, a nervous, repetitive motion. "Your grandfather had many affairs to settle," she said vaguely. "I know." I said, "But the family story is that he sold the business. The records say he dissolved it and moved the assets into this trust. Mom says the check is a fake. Mrs. Gable. She says Grandpa was senile." Mrs. Gable looked up then, and there was a flash of fire in her watery blue eyes. "Harry was never senile," she said sharply. "He was sharp until the moment he closed his eyes. Do not let Lorraine tell you otherwise." "Then why would she lie?" I asked. "Why is she so terrified of this check, Mrs. Gable looked at the window again. She lowered her voice, leaning in over the tea tray. "Because Harry didn't trust her. Stella. He loved her. But he didn't trust her, not after the business." "What happened with the business?" I pressed. She shook her head, pulling back. "That is not my story to tell. And frankly, dear, your mother won't like you asking about that. She has a way of making life very difficult for people who ask about that year." "That year?" I asked. "The year the business ended." She said, "It was a bad year. A lot of money moved around. A lot of friendships were broken. Harry did what he had to do to save what he could." "Save it from who?" Mrs. Gable stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. She looked tired. Suddenly, the weight of old secrets pressing down on her shoulders. "Leave it be. Stella, you have your life. You have your job. Don't go digging up the foundation of the house just to see what's buried there. The house might fall down on you." I left Mrs. Gable's feeling colder than when I arrived. She hadn't given me details, but she had given me confirmation. There was a before and after regarding the business, and my mother was the catalyst. I drove home, my phone sitting silently on the passenger seat. When I got to my apartment, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my couch. I picked up my phone to check the family group chat, a text thread titled Jenkins Jam that included my parents, my brother, 2 aunts, and 3 cousins. It was usually a stream of birthday emojis and photos of dinners. I opened WhatsApp. "You have been removed from this group." I stared at the screen. The text was gray, small, and brutal. I checked the participant list. I couldn't see it anymore. I tried to send a message to my cousin. "Sarah, we were close. We had shared a room at the beach house every summer. Hey, did something happen with the group chat?" The message sent. 1 check mark. I waited. "Usually." Sarah replied in seconds. 5 minutes passed, then 10, then 30. I went to Facebook. I clicked on my mother's profile. She had posted a photo 20 minutes ago. It was a picture of her and my father at a restaurant, smiling over a plate of calamari. The caption read, "So grateful for family who understands the value of loyalty and honesty. Blessed evening with my love. Underneath, my Aunt Linda had commented, beautiful. Ignore the negativity. Love you guys. My cousin Sarah had liked the comment. My stomach dropped. It was a physical sensation, like missing a step on a staircase. This was the punishment. This was the weapon my mother had honed over decades. She didn't scream. She isolated. She created a narrative where she was the victim of some vague cruelty, and everyone rallied around her. Cutting out the cancer. I was the cancer. I put the phone down. The silence in my apartment felt heavy, suffocating. I started to doubt myself. It was a creeping, insidious feeling. Maybe I was being dramatic. Maybe the check was a mistake. Maybe I'd embarrassed her by depositing it, and she was just reacting out of hurt. Maybe Mrs. Gable was just an old woman confused by the past. Was $20,000 worth losing my family? Was I really the villain here? My mother knew exactly how to make me feel this way. She knew that my greatest fear was being too much, being difficult, being unlovable. She was pressing that bruise with surgical precision. I almost called her. I almost picked up the phone to apologize, to offer to transfer the money back, to beg to be let back into the group chat. But then I looked at the coffee table. The receipt from the bank was still there. Current balance, $23,412. And the note, don't ask your mother. He knew. Grandpa knew she would do this. He had predicted the silence. I didn't call. I went to bed. But I left my phone in the living room. 2 days passed in silence. No calls, no texts, just the digital void where my family used to be. I went to work. I came home. I ate dinner alone. It was lonely, but strangely, it was also peaceful. I wasn't walking on eggshells. I wasn't managing her moods. On the third day, the letter arrived. It came to my apartment. Not my parents' house. That meant she had given the lawyer my address. The envelope was thick, cream-colored linen stock. The return address was embossed. The law offices of Pendergrass Associates. I opened it with trembling hands. Dear Ms. Jenkins, we represent your mother, Mrs. Lorraine Jenkins, in her capacity as executor of the estate of Harry Jenkins. It has come to our attention that you are in possession of certain financial instruments and potential estate documents that were removed from the decedent's safety deposit box without proper authorization. While we understand that grief can lead to confusion regarding estate assets, we must insist that all instruments, including but not limited to any cashier's checks or trust documents, be returned to the executor immediately for proper accounting. Failure to return estate assets may be construed as misappropriation. We hope to resolve this matter amicably and without court intervention. Sincerely, Alan Pendergrass, Esquire. I read it twice. Misappropriation. Court intervention. The words were designed to terrify. They were designed to make a layperson panic and surrender. My mother wasn't just icing me out. She was threatening to sue me. I felt the panic rise, hot and choking. I needed to call her. I needed to fix this. No, don't ask your mother. I took a breath. I looked at the letter again. There was something odd about it. It was dated today. It had arrived by courier. Same-day delivery. That cost money. That was urgent. And the phrasing. Potential estate documents. If they knew I had the check, why call it a potential document? Why not list the check number? Why not list the amount? They didn't know details. They were fishing. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the letterhead. Law Offices of Pendergrass Associates. How may I direct your call? A receptionist answered. Sounding bored. I would like to speak to Alan Pendergrass. Please. This is Stella Jenkins regarding the Jenkins estate letter I just received. One moment. The hold music was a tinny classical piece. I paced my kitchen, my heart hammering. Hello, this is Jennifer. Mr. Pendergrass's legal assistant. How can I help you? Hi, Jennifer. I'm calling about a letter I received today regarding my grandfather's estate, Harry Jenkins. There was the sound of typing. A pause. I'm sorry. Who did you say you were? Jennifer asked. Stella Jenkins. The letter was addressed to me. It demanded I return documents. More typing. The typing stopped. Ms. Jenkins, are you sure you received a letter today? Yes, I said. It was delivered by courier about 20 minutes ago. That's odd, Jennifer said. Her voice lost its professional polish for a second. We just opened the file for Mrs. Jenkins this morning. I haven't even drafted the initial correspondence yet. Mr. Pendergrass met with your mother at 10 o'clock. I looked at the clock. It was 2 in the afternoon. So the letter didn't go through your standard mail process? I asked. Jennifer hesitated. Sometimes Mr. Pendergrass will dictate a rush letter if the client insists, but usually we review those before they go out. I don't see a copy in the outbox yet. Did she hand deliver it? No, it was a courier. Okay, well, Mr. Pendergrass is in court right now. Can I have him call you back? Yes, please. I hung up. My mother had gone to the lawyer at 10. She had panicked. She had demanded he write something immediately to scare me. She hadn't waited for the file to be properly set up. She had forced a thread out the door before the ink was dry. Why the rush? If the check was fake, she would have just waited for the bank to bounce it. If the check was real but misappropriated, the law was on her side. She could afford to wait a week. She was rushing because she was afraid of what I would do with the money, or what the money represented. I sat back down at my computer. If she was watching me this closely, if she was hiring lawyers, what else was she doing? Maya's voice echoed in my head. Check the data. I logged into my credit monitoring service. I hadn't checked it in months. I had excellent credit, paid my bills on time. I had nothing to worry about. I opened the report. My score was fine, 780. But I scrolled down to the inquiries section. There were the usual ones: my landlord from 2 years ago, my credit card issuer doing a periodic review, and then there was a section for soft inquiries. Clearview Financial Services. Inquiry. Date: yesterday. Clearview Financial Services. Inquiry. Date: 3 days ago. Clearview Financial Services. Inquiry. Date: last week. I froze. I had never heard of Clearview Financial Services. I clicked on the entry. It didn't give much info, just a generic address in Delaware. I scrolled further down to my closed accounts. There was an old line of credit from a furniture store I had used 5 years ago to buy a sofa. It had been paid off and closed for 3 years, but next to it, there was a note. Status updated. Yesterday. How could a closed account be updated? I called the number for the furniture financing company. After navigating a hellish automated menu, I got a human, "Hi, I'm looking at my credit report and it says my old account was updated yesterday, but I closed it 3 years ago. Let me pull that up." The agent said, "Ah, yes, it looks like we received a request to reopen the line of credit based on prior history." What? I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't request that. It came through electronically. The agent said, "Verified with the social security number and the mother's maiden name as security." My mother's maiden name. Who requested it? I demanded. It looks like the request originated from... Hold on. A consolidation partner. Clearview Financial. Cancel it, I said, my voice shaking. Cancel it right now. Put a fraud alert on my file. That was not me. Okay, ma'am. I can freeze that request. But you should know. The address on the application wasn't your current billing address. What was it? It was 442 Maple Drive, my parents' house. I hung up the phone and felt the room spin. My mother wasn't just trying to get the check back. She was trying to open credit in my name. Why? To ruin my score so I couldn't move? To drown me in debt so I'd have to come crawling back for help? Or was she trying to find out how much credit I had access to see if I could afford a lawyer? It was a violation so deep, so personal, it made me nauseous. She used my social security number. She used her own maiden name as the password. She thought she owned me. To her, I wasn't a separate adult. I was an extension of herself. A limb she could articulate however she pleased. I felt a surge of anger that burned through the fear. It was a clean, hot anger. I grabbed my purse. I needed to close the loop on the lie she started. I drove to the bank branch where I had deposited the check. I didn't make an appointment. I walked straight to the glass-walled office of the branch manager. "Excuse me," I said to the assistant. "I need to speak to the manager. It's urgent." 10 minutes later, I was sitting across from a woman named Ms. Cheng. "Ms. Jenkins, how can I help you? I deposited a cashier's check here 2 days ago. It cleared." "Yes?" "My mother claims that someone from this bank called her home phone yesterday and told her the check was counterfeit and that I was facing legal action. She claims she was told to collect cash from me to fix it." Ms. Cheng's expression went from polite interest to professional shock. "I'm sorry?" "She said someone from this bank called her?" "Yes." Ms. Cheng turned to her computer. She typed furiously for a moment. "Ms. Jenkins, I am looking at the notes on your account. There are no notes indicating any outgoing calls. Furthermore, for a privacy breach of that magnitude, calling a third party about a depositor's account, we would be looking at a serious firing offense, and we certainly would never, ever suggest a customer withdraw cash to fix a counterfeit issue. That sounds like a scam script." I nodded. I knew it. But hearing her say it was like finding the floor in a dark room. "So the check is good?" I asked. "The check is perfectly good," Ms. Chung said. "It was drawn on a trust account held by our institutional division. The funds were verified instantly. There is no investigation. There is no problem." "Thank you," I said. Do you want to report fraud regarding the caller?" Ms. Chung asked gently. I stood up. "No. I know who the caller was." I walked out of the bank. My mother hadn't received a call. She had invented it. She had fabricated a federal crime scenario to scare me into handing over the cash. She was desperate. I drove home. The sun was setting, casting long orange shadows across the road. I felt different. The Stella who had cried over a group chat 3 days ago was gone. In her place was someone who checked credit reports and interviewed bank managers. I parked my car and walked up to my apartment building. I checked my mailbox. Empty. I walked up the 3 flights of stairs to my door. There was a white envelope lying on my doormat. It wasn't mailed. There was no stamp. It had been slipped under the door. I looked down the hallway. It was empty. The air was still. I picked up the envelope. It was plain. Cheap paper. My name was handwritten on the front in blue ballpoint pen. But it wasn't my mother's handwriting. It was shaky, jagged. It looked like Grandpa's handwriting, but Grandpa was dead. My heart started to pound in my ears. A heavy, rhythmic thud. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and locked it behind me immediately. I engaged the deadbolt. I tore the envelope open. Inside was a photocopy. It was a single page, grainy and slightly crooked, like it had been copied in a hurry on a home machine. It was a legal document. First Amendment to the H.J. Legacy Holdings Trust. It was dated 4 years ago. I scanned the legalese, my eyes skipping over the whereas and hereby clauses until I reached the bottom of the page. There was a list of beneficiaries. Lorraine Jenkins, daughter. Income beneficiary. Mark Jenkins, grandson. Lump sum distribution. And then, circled in thick red ink, the ink looking fresh, even though the document was a photocopy, was the third line: Stella Jenkins, granddaughter, residual beneficiary and successor trustee upon the event of... The rest of the sentence was cut off at the bottom of the page. Successor trustee. I stared at the words. A trustee controlled the money. A trustee made the decisions. If this document was real, I wasn't just supposed to get $20,000. I was supposed to be in charge. I looked at the signature at the bottom. Harry Jenkins. It was his. And next to it, the notary stamp. I looked at the envelope again. Who had put this under my door? It wasn't my mother. She would have burned this. Someone else knew. Someone else was watching. And someone else wanted me to know that the $20,000 was just the tip of the iceberg. I walked to the window and looked down at the street. A gray sedan was pulling away from the curb. It looked like the car Mrs. Gable's daughter drove. I held the paper against my chest. My mother wasn't trying to protect the estate from me. She was trying to protect herself from me. I wasn't the prop. I was the boss. And she knew it. the office of Samuel Gentry, a state attorney, did not look like the kind of place where high-stakes family dramas played out. It was a small, dusty suite above a bakery in the older part of town, smelling faintly of yeast and lemon polish. I had chosen him because he had no connection to my family. No bridge games with my mother. No golf dates with my father. Mr. Gentry adjusted his spectacles and looked down at the photocopy I had placed on his desk. The document slipped under my door. Then he looked at the image of the cashier's check on my phone. You have to understand the mechanics of a cashier's check to understand your grandfather's intent. Mr. Gentry said, his voice gravelly and slow. He wasn't trying to give you an inheritance. Stella, an inheritance goes through probate. It gets listed, taxed, and distributed by the executor. It is a public process subject to family politics. He tapped the screen of my phone with a thick finger. This is a cash transfer. It is immediate. It is private. And most importantly, it is done. By the time anyone finds out about it, the money is already yours. It is a way to bypass the gatekeepers, bypass my mother. I said, precisely. He leaned back, the leather chair creaking. But this document? This is more interesting. He picked up the photocopy of the First Amendment to the H.J. Legacy Holdings Trust. You said this appeared under your door? Yes. Mr. Gentry squinted at the text. This is a snippet. An amendment changes a specific part of a pre-existing trust. It implies there is a master document, likely 50 or 60 pages long. That details every asset your grandfather owned. This page here? This is just the page that changes the lineup. He pointed to the circled line. Successor trustee, Stella Jenkins. Do you know what a successor trustee does? He asked. I assumed they just manage things? They step in when the primary trustee dies or becomes incapacitated. He corrected. If this amendment is valid, you are not just a beneficiary. Stella, you are the boss. You legally control the assets in the trust. You outrank the executor regarding anything inside this specific trust entity. I felt a cold prickle on my arms. I outranked my mother. If this is real. I said, if it is real. He agreed. But look at the date. 4 years ago. If your grandfather signed this, and if it was notarized, then for the last 4 years, you have been the designated successor. The question is, where is the original? And why does the executor not want you to know it exists? Because she wants the money. I said, Mr. Gentry shook his head. Maybe, but usually, when people hide trust documents, it is not just about greed, it is about liability. A trustee has a fiduciary duty. If the previous trustee, your grandfather, or perhaps someone acting for him, mishandled funds, the new trustee is legally required to audit the books. If you take over, you have to look at the history. If someone has been dipping into the cookie jar, your appointment is not just a loss of control for them, it is an indictment. He handed the paper back to me. My advice? Keep the $20,000 liquid. Do not spend it on cars or clothes. That money is a war chest. It is a retainer fee. Because if you pursue this, you are not walking into a misunderstanding. You are walking into a crime scene. I left his office with a stomach full of lead. A crime scene. I drove home, my mind racing. I thought about the prop check. My mother hadn't just been embarrassed. She had been trying to confiscate evidence. When I pulled into my apartment complex, I saw a silver Lexus parked in the visitor spot. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. It was her car. I considered keeping driving. I could go to a hotel. I could go to Maya's place. But the words of the note came back to me. Finish what you started. I parked. I walked up the stairs. She was standing at my door, holding a Tupperware container. She looked impeccable, as always. Cream linen pants, a silk blouse, her hair perfectly coiffed. She didn't look like a woman who had tried to open a credit line in my name 3 days ago. She looked like a mom. Stella, she said, her face softening into a look of exhausted concern. Thank God you are home. I stopped 5 feet away. What do you want? Mom? She held up the Tupperware. I made lasagna. I know it is your favorite. I thought we could just talk. No yelling, just us. I unlocked the door but didn't step aside to let her in immediately. Talk about what? About how silly this has all gotten, she said, flashing a tired, self-deprecating smile. Can I come in? These heels are killing me. I let her in. It felt like inviting a vampire across the threshold. But I needed to see what she would do. I needed to see the performance Mr. Gentry had warned me about. She walked in, set the lasagna on the counter, and looked around my apartment with a critical eye. You really need new curtains, she murmured. These look so dormitory. I leaned against the kitchen island, crossing my arms. You didn't come here to discuss my curtains. Mom. She sighed and turned to face me. Her expression was a masterpiece of maternal martyrdom. I came to apologize. Stella. I waited. I was too harsh the other day. She said, I was grieving. Losing Grandpa has been so hard on me. You have no idea the stress I'm under handling the estate. And when I saw that check, I just snapped. I didn't want you to get your hopes up and then be disappointed if it didn't clear. It cleared, I said. I know, she said quickly. I know it did, and that is wonderful. Really, it is a nice little gift from Grandpa. A nice little gift. $20,000 was a nice little gift. So, she continued, taking a step closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I have been thinking, you should keep it. I blinked. Excuse me? Keep the money, she said, waving her hand dismissively. I spoke to the lawyers. We can write it off as a gift inter vivos, a gift made during life. We don't need to return it to the estate. You can keep it, pay off your car, go on a vacation. You look like you need a vacation. Honey, you look tired. She reached out to touch my arm. I flinched back. Her hand hovered in the air, then dropped. There is just one thing, she said, her eyes hardening slightly. We need to stop all this nonsense about investigations and trusts. It is upsetting your grandmother. It is upsetting the family. If you keep the money, you need to promise me you will just let the rest go. Let me handle the paperwork. That is my job. You just enjoy the cash. It was a bribe. It was a clear, transactional bribe. Take the $20,000 and shut up. If the check was a prop, I said quietly, why are you letting me keep the money? She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. Because I love you. Stella. Because I don't want to fight over scraps. It's not scraps. Mom, I said, it's a trust. J. Legacy Holdings. I saw the name on the check. Her face went blank. The warmth evaporated instantly. That trust is defunct. She said cold. It was closed years ago. Then why did the check clear against it? Computer error, she snapped. I shook my head. No, I don't think so. And I don't think I'm going to stop asking questions. Her posture changed. She grew taller, stiffer. The concerned mother vanished, replaced by the woman who used to inspect my room with white gloves. You are making a mistake. Stella, I don't want your lasagna. Mom, and I don't want the deal. I am going to find out what Grandpa wanted me to know. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her purse. You know, she said, her voice dripping with pity. I have been trying to protect you from this. But you are leaving me no choice. Everyone has noticed. Stella? Noticed what? That you are not well. I frowned. What? You are spiraling, she said, gesturing vaguely at me. You are obsessing over money. You are inventing conspiracies. You are imagining phone calls from banks. I spoke to Aunt Linda yesterday, and she agreed. You have always been fragile, dramatic. But this is manic behavior. I felt a flush of heat. I am not manic. I am asking for accountability. You are hallucinating, she said firmly. You are seeing things that aren't there because you are desperate for attention. Grandpa didn't leave you a secret empire. Stella. He left you a pity check because he knew you couldn't make it on your own, and now you are twisting it into some grand mystery because you can't accept that you are just ordinary. Get out, I said, She walked to the door. "I will pray for you," she said, "and I will make sure the family knows to be gentle with you. We won't hold this outburst against you when you finally crash." She closed the door. I stood there, shaking. It was so effective, even knowing she was lying. A tiny part of me whispered, "What if she's right? What if I am crazy?" My phone buzzed on the counter. It was a message from my cousin Sarah. "Hey, I don't know if I should send this, but I think you need to hear it. Mom just forwarded me this voicemail from your mom. She's telling everyone you're having a breakdown. Is this true?" Attached was an audio file. I pressed play. My mother's voice filled the kitchen. It sounded weepy, broken. "Linda, it's Lorraine. I just left Stella's apartment. It is worse than I thought. She is completely delusional. She was screaming at me about secret trusts and hidden documents. She is waving around that prop check like it is the Constitution. I think she is having a psychotic break. We need to cut her off. Linda, for her own good. If we indulge her, she will only get worse. We have to be firm. She is hallucinating about money. It is so sad." Click. I stared at the phone. Hallucinating. Delusional. She wasn't just gaslighting me. She was salting the earth. She was preemptively discrediting me so that if I ever found proof, the family would dismiss it as the ramblings of a mad woman. It was brilliant, and it was evil. But she had made a mistake. She is waving around that prop check. She used the phrase again, prop check. If she really thought I was crazy, she wouldn't be focused on the check. She would be focused on getting me a doctor. She was focused on the narrative. I saved the audio file. I backed it up to the cloud. I needed to clear my head. I sat down at my computer. I needed to anchor myself in facts. My mother called me unstable. I needed to prove to myself that my history was real. I started digging through my old digital files, scanned tax returns, student loan documents. I wanted to see the financial reality of my 20s. The struggle she claimed was due to my incompetence. I opened a folder from my junior year of college, 2012 financials. I remembered that year. It was the year my dean's scholarship had fallen through. My mother had called me, sounding devastated, saying the university had cut the funding but that she and Dad would figure it out by taking a loan against the house, and I would have to pay them back later. I had spent the next 5 years paying her $300 a month. I opened the PDF of my tuition statement from the university portal, which I had saved years ago. I looked at the line items. Tuition, $12,500. Room board, $4,200. Payment, H. Jenkins, minus $16,700. I froze. Payment, H. Jenkins, not Lorraine Jenkins, not Jenkins Family Loan. Jenkins, Harry Jenkins. I pulled up the email from my mother from that same month. Stella, bad news. The scholarship is gone. Dad and I are scrambling. We are wiring the money tomorrow, but we will need you to sign a promissory note when you come home for Thanksgiving. She had lied. Grandpa had paid my tuition, probably directly to the school. My mother had seen the zero balance, claimed credit for it, and then collected repayments from me for a loan that never existed. She had stolen thousands of dollars from her own daughter. But worse than the money, she had stolen the truth. She had let me believe I was a burden. She had let me believe I was a financial drain on the family, creating a debt of guilt that I had been paying off with obedience for a decade. Grandpa had tried to help me then, too, and she had intercepted it. I felt a hot tear slide down my cheek. It wasn't sadness, it was rage, pure, clarifying rage. I wasn't unstable. I was exploited. I wiped my face. I needed to find the source. J. Legacy Holdings. I called the bank again, not the branch, but the main customer service line. I used the automated system to query the routing number on the bottom of my check. The system read back the issuing bank details. First National, Institutional Trust Division. I needed to know who opened that account. The next morning, I called in sick. I didn't care. I went to the downtown branch of the library and pulled microfiche records of local business filings, bypassing the digitized ones that were sometimes incomplete. I found the dissolution paperwork for Jenkins Associates. It was dated 12 years ago. Managing partner, Harry Jenkins. Silent partner, Marcus Sterling. Marcus Sterling. I knew that name. He was a quiet man who used to come to the company picnics. He always wore suspenders and drank iced tea. I hadn't seen him in 10 years. I searched for him online. He wasn't on social media. I found a listing for a landline in a neighboring suburb. I drove there. It was a small, well-kept bungalow with a ramp leading to the front door. I knocked. A woman answered. She looked like a caretaker. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for Marcus Sterling." I said, "My name is Stella Jenkins, Harry Jenkins's granddaughter." The woman's expression changed. She looked over her shoulder. "Marcus?" she called out. "There is a young lady here. Harry's granddaughter." There was a pause. Then a shaky voice called back, "Let her in." I walked into the living room. Marcus Sterling was sitting in a recliner, a blanket over his knees. He looked frail, much older than I remembered. His hands trembled where they rested on the armrests. "Hello, Mr. Sterling," I said. He looked at me with watery, fearful eyes. "You look like him," he whispered, "around the eyes." "Mr. Sterling?" "I found a check," I said, getting straight to the point. "From H.J. Legacy Holdings." He flinched. His whole body jerked as if I had slapped him. He shut it down. Marcus said, his voice thready, "He shut it all down." "Who did?" "Harry. He tried to fix it." "Fix what?" I sat on the edge of the sofa, leaning forward. "Mr. Sterling, my mother is trying to say the money is fake. She is trying to say I am crazy. I need to know what happened to the business." Marcus closed his eyes. He took a rattling breath. "Your mother," he said, spitting the word out like a curse. "Lorraine. She was the bookkeeper. Did you know that?" I nodded. "She was very good at it," he said. "Too good. Harry didn't look at the ledgers. Neither did I. We were building houses. We trusted family." He opened his eyes. They were wet. She was skimming. He whispered, "For years. Management fees. Consulting costs." She was draining the liquidity. When Harry found out, it broke his heart. It literally broke him. "Why didn't he call the police?" I asked. Marcus laughed. A dry, wheezing sound. "Call the police on his own daughter? Harry? Never. He couldn't bear the shame. He couldn't bear the idea of her going to prison. So he made a deal." "What deal?" "He dissolved the company." Marcus said, "He sold off the assets to pay me out. What was left. Anyway. And he took the remaining properties and put them into a trust. H.J. Legacy. He made himself the trustee, and he made her the beneficiary. But with controls, she couldn't touch the principal. Only the income. He put her on an allowance. Stella. That's what she hates. He treated her like a child because she stole like a criminal." "And me?" I asked. "Where do I fit in?" Marcus looked at me sadly. "You were the fail-safe." Harry knew he was dying. He knew that once he was gone, she would try to break the trust. She would try to get at the principal. She would bully anyone he appointed as trustee. So he appointed me? He wanted to, Marcus said. But he was afraid she would destroy you. He was afraid she would do exactly what she is doing now. So he hid the amendment. He put it in the safety deposit box. He told me, "Marcus, if she crosses the line, Stella needs to know. Did you put the photocopy under my door?" I asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, I can't drive anymore." "Then who did?" Marcus hesitated. He looked at the window. "The box," he said. "The safety deposit box." "What about it?" "I was a signer," he said, "on the old business box. When Harry died, Lorraine went to clear it out. She took everything, or she thought she did, but someone else had access. I realized, you said you were a signer." I said, "I was." He said, "But Harry added someone else right at the end. Someone he trusted to deliver a message if things got bad." "Who?" He didn't say. He just said, "The backup." I stared at him. "The backup. Mr. Sterling." I said, "The $20,000. The note said, 'Use this to finish what you started.' Marcus nodded. It wasn't an inheritance. Stella. It was a retainer. He knew you would need a lawyer. He knew Lorraine would come at you with everything she had. He wanted to make sure you could afford to fight back. It was a test. A test? To see if you were brave enough to cash it. To see if you were ready to be the trustee. I stood up. My knees felt weak. Thank you. Mr. Sterling. He reached out and grabbed my hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. Be careful, he hissed. She is desperate. She has been borrowing money against her future inheritance for years. If that trust is locked down by you, she goes bankrupt. She isn't fighting for her reputation. Stella, she is fighting for her survival. I walked out of the house into the bright afternoon. It all made sense. The panic, the prop story, the gaslighting. She wasn't protecting the family name. She was broke. She had spent money she didn't have, counting on Grandpa dying and leaving her the pot. But Grandpa had locked the pot and given me the key. She needed me to be crazy. She needed me to be incompetent. Because if I was sane, and if I was the trustee, I would see the books. I would see the theft. I drove back to town. I went straight to Mr. Gentry's office. He was waiting for me. He looked grim. I got the preliminary inventory from the court. He said, holding up a file. Pendergrass filed it this morning. I took the file. I scanned the list of assets. House on Elm Street. Checking account ending in 4490. Savings account ending in 2210. 2018 Toyota Camry. That's it? I asked. That's it, Gentry said. Where is H.E.J. Legacy Holdings? I asked. Where is the trust? He looked at me over his glasses. It's not there. Stella. She omitted it completely. She is pretending it doesn't exist, which meant one of two things. Either she had destroyed the original documents and thought she was safe, or she was already looting it. I looked at Gentry. What do we do? I asked. He smiled. A sharp, predatory smile. We object, he said, and we dropped the hammer. The lock on the front door of my childhood home hadn't changed in 30 years. It was a heavy brass deadbolt that required a specific jiggle of the key, a wrist motion I had mastered by the time I was 12. But when I drove by on a Tuesday evening, intending to pick up a box of winter coats I had stored in the attic, my key didn't jiggle. It didn't even turn. It slid in only halfway and hit a hard, metallic stop. I stood on the porch, the welcome mat mocking me with its cheerful script, and stared at the shiny new hardware. It wasn't just a new lock. It was a statement. I rang the doorbell. I knew my mother was home. Her car was in the driveway. No one answered. I rang again. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from her. Please do not cause a scene on the porch. The neighbors are watching. You are not welcome here until you are ready to apologize and seek treatment. I have put your things in the garage. I will leave the code open for 10 minutes. I walked to the detached garage. The side door was unlocked. Inside, sitting on the concrete floor next to the lawnmower, was a single cardboard box. It wasn't my winter coats. It was a random assortment of items from my old bedroom, a few high school yearbooks, a stuffed bear, and a cracked picture frame. But the things that actually mattered, my grandmother's quilt, the photo albums from my study abroad year, the jewelry box with my pearl earrings, were missing. She was holding my memories hostage. I stood there in the dusty garage, smelling gasoline and old grass, and I felt a familiar urge to cry. I wanted to bang on the back door and beg. I wanted to promise whatever she wanted me to promise just to get my grandmother's quilt back. But then I touched the pocket of my jeans, where the receipt from the bank was folded into a tiny square. Finish what you started. I took a deep breath. I pulled out my phone. I didn't text her back. I didn't call. Instead, I took a photo of the box. I took a photo of the new lock on the front door. I took a screenshot of her text message. I opened a new note on my phone titled Documentation. Date: October 12th. Incident: access denied to primary residence. Personal property withheld. Condition of return: admission of mental illness. I wasn't a daughter anymore. I was a plaintiff. And she wasn't my mother. She was a hostile counterparty. I loaded the box into my car and drove away. For the next 3 days, I treated my life like a high-security clearance zone. I changed my passwords. I set up two-factor authentication on everything. I stopped answering calls from unknown numbers. I was at work, reviewing a bill of lading for a shipment of electronics, when my cell phone rang. The caller ID said Oak Street Management. That was my landlord. I picked up, my stomach tightening. Hello? Hi. Stella. It's Mr. Henderson. Do you have a minute? Sure. Mr. Henderson, is everything okay with the apartment? Well, that is what I wanted to ask you, he said, sounding uncomfortable. I got a call this morning from a woman who said she was your aunt. My hand gripped the mouse so hard the plastic creaked. My aunt? Yes. She sounded very distressed. She wanted to know if you were current on your rent. She said the family was worried you might be erratic with your finances lately, and they wanted to pay ahead for you if you were in trouble. She asked if you had been having any episodes in the building, loud noises, complaints from neighbors, that sort of thing. I closed my eyes. It was so smart. It was framed as benevolence. We want to pay her rent. But the goal was destruction. She was trying to plant the seed in my landlord's head that I was unstable, a risk, a problem tenant. She was trying to destroy my housing security so I would have nowhere to go but back to her. Mr. Henderson, I said, keeping my voice level, professional. I have never missed a rent payment in 4 years. You know that. I do, he said. That is what I told her. I am currently in a legal dispute with my extended family regarding an estate issue. I said, they are using harassment tactics to pressure me. If anyone calls about me again, please do not give them any information, and please let me know immediately. There was a pause. I understand. Stella, I'm sorry. I just wanted to check. Thank you. Mr. Henderson. I hung up and added the incident to my log. Date: October 15th. Witness: landlord. Action: attempted character assassination and housing interference via third party. I wasn't sad anymore. I was cold. That afternoon, Mr. Gentry called me. Can you come to the office? He asked. I have it. You have what? The trust, he said. The full instrument. I didn't ask how he got it. I left work and drove straight to the bakery-scented office. Mr. Gentry had a thick stack of papers on his desk. It wasn't a photocopy this time. It was a bound legal document with a blue cover. The law is a beautiful thing when it works, Gentry said. Tapping the cover, we filed a petition to compel production of the trust instrument based on the amendment you found. The judge granted it this morning. Your mother's lawyer had to cough it up or face a contempt charge. He opened the document. It confirms everything, he said. But it is even more specific than we thought. He turned to page 42. Here's the distribution clause, he said. Upon the death of Harry Jenkins, the trust splits. Half goes to a marital trust for your grandmother, which is standard. The other half was supposed to go to your mother. Outright. Supposed to? Gentry pointed to a paragraph in bold text. However, in the event that the trustee determines that the beneficiary, Lorraine Jenkins, has engaged in fiscal mismanagement or has encumbered her future interest, her share shall be held in a spendthrift trust, administered by an independent trustee. Grandpa knew she was borrowing against the inheritance. I whispered, he knew. Gentry agreed. But here's the kicker. Look at the integrity clause. I read the paragraph he pointed to. If any beneficiary or family member attempts to coerce, intimidate, misrepresent facts to, or otherwise interfere with any other beneficiary's rights under this trust, the independent trustee shall be authorized to release the integrity memorandum to all interested parties, including legal counsel and the Internal Revenue Service. The integrity memorandum. I repeated, what is that? It is a separate document, Gentry said. A sealed letter referenced in the trust. It essentially says, if everyone plays nice, the secrets stay buried. If Lorraine tries to bully anyone, the secrets go public. I sat back. That was the panic. That was why she called the check a prop. That was why she was terrified of me asking questions. If I pushed, the integrity memorandum would be released, and whatever was in there, proof of the embezzlement, proof of the tax fraud, would destroy her. She isn't protecting me. I said, she is holding a grenade with the pin pulled out, and she is terrified I'm going to bump her arm. Exactly, Gentry said. And because you deposited that check, you triggered the system. You are now a visible part of the paper trail. So what do I do? You wait, Gentry said. She knows we have this now. Pendergrass would have told her. She is going to try one last thing. She is going to try to get you to sign a waiver. She needs you to formally renounce your interest and admit the check was a mistake. If you do that, the inquiry stops, and the memo stays sealed. She will never ask me nicely. I said, no, Gentry said, she won't. She will try to break you first. The invitation came 2 days later. It wasn't a text. It was a phone call from my Aunt Linda. Linda was my mother's younger sister, the peacekeeper of the family, which usually meant she pressured everyone else to surrender to my mother's will. Stella, honey, Linda said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. We are all getting together for dinner on Sunday at the big house. Mom is making roast beef. We really want you to come. I'm not welcome at the house. Linda, I said, Mom changed the locks. Oh, that was just a misunderstanding, Linda chirped. She was just worried about security. She wants to talk. We all do. We want to clear the air. Please, Stella. For Grandma. For Grandma. The ultimate guilt card. I looked at my computer screen. I had the facts. I had the trust excerpts Gentry had scanned for me. I'll come, I said. I knew it wasn't a dinner. It was an ambush. But I needed to look them in the eye. I needed to see if there was anyone left in that family worth saving. I arrived at 6 o'clock sharp. The new lock glinted in the porch light. I rang the bell. My mother opened the door. She wasn't smiling. She looked pale. Her eyes rimmed with red. She stepped aside to let me in. Hello? Stella, she said stiffly. I walked into the living room. It was staged. My father was sitting in his armchair, staring at the floor. Aunt Linda was on the sofa, clutching a tissue. My Uncle Mike, Linda's husband, a loud man who owned a car dealership, was standing by the fireplace, looking impatient. My cousin Sarah was there, too. Sitting in the corner, looking terrified. There was no smell of roast beef. On the coffee table, right in the center, was a legal pad and 2 cell phones. Face up, I could see the red recording bar at the top of my mother's screen. Sit down. Stella, Uncle Mike said. I didn't sit. I stood by the archway, keeping my back to the door. I thought we were having dinner. I said, we need to address the elephant in the room first. Aunt Linda said, her voice wobbling. My mother walked to the center of the room. She clasped her hands in front of her. She looked like she was acting in a play she had rehearsed 1,000 times. Stella, she began, her voice trembling with manufactured sorrow. We are all here because we love you. We are worried about you. This behavior, this obsession with the check, the lies about the bank, it is not you. I looked at the recording phone. I haven't lied about anything. Mom, I said clearly, please don't. She cut me off, holding up a hand. We know you are struggling. We know you are under a lot of pressure at work. We are willing to help you. Dad and I are willing to pay for a treatment program, a nice one, where you can rest. Treatment for what? I asked. For your break, Aunt Linda whispered. I looked around the room. They had all bought it, or they were all pretending to buy it. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. He was a weak man. I realized he had let her run over him for 40 years, and he wasn't going to stop her from running over me. Here's the deal, Uncle Mike said. Stepping forward, he was using his car salesman voice, firm, authoritative. You sign a statement admitting the check was a prank that got out of hand. You return the $20,000, and in exchange, the family will support you. We won't press charges for the fraud. Fraud? I asked. Passing a counterfeit check is a felony. Stella, Mike said, your mother is trying to keep you out of jail. I laughed. I couldn't help it. It was a short, dry sound that made everyone jump. You guys are amazing. I said, you really are. You have this whole script written out. Stella, stop, my mother hissed. I reached into my bag. I didn't pull out a gun. I pulled out a single piece of paper, the deposit receipt. I walked over to the coffee table and slapped it down next to the recording phones. If it was fake, I said, my voice cutting through the room. Why did it clear? Silence. Absolute, heavy silence. Uncle Mike looked at the receipt. He frowned. Banks make mistakes, my mother said quickly. It will bounce. It just takes time. It has been 10 days. Mom, I said, cashier's checks don't take 10 days to bounce. The money is in my account. I spent $500 of it on a lawyer this morning. I looked at my father. Dad, I said, you worked at a bank for 15 years before you retired. You know how this works. If I deposited a fake $20,000 check, would the funds be available 10 days later? My father looked up. He looked at my mother, then at me. He opened his mouth. Harry, don't, my mother warned. It would have been returned by now. My father said softly. Lorraine turned on him. Shut up. Harry, you don't know what you are talking about. I looked at Aunt Linda. Mom says I'm hallucinating. I said, but the money is real. The bank says it's real. So either the entire banking system is having a psychotic break, or Mom is lying to you. Linda looked confused. She looked at Lorraine. Lorraine, you said the bank called you. You said they confirmed it was fake. They did! Lorraine shrieked. Her calm facade was cracking. The cracks were jagged and ugly. They are lying to her. They are setting her up. Why? I asked. Why would the bank set me up? Because Grandpa set this up, she screamed. She wasn't sad anymore. She was furious. He did this to humiliate me. He gave you that money to ruin me. So it wasn't a prop? I asked quietly. Everyone in the room heard it. The admission. Lorraine froze. She realized she had stepped into the trap. It doesn't matter what it was, she stammered. It wasn't yours to take. It belonged to the family, to the estate, to pay for his care. Aunt Linda chimed in, grasping for a moral high ground. We all sacrificed for his care. Stella, we all chipped in. I turned to Linda. Chipped in? Yes, Linda said, tears springing to her eyes. For the last 2 years, the nursing home costs, the medication. Lorraine handled all the bills. But we all wrote checks. Mike and I gave $500 a month. Your father gave half his pension. We did it for Grandpa. And you take that money and spend it on a lawyer? I felt a sick feeling in my stomach. Linda, I said, Grandpa had long-term care insurance. No, he didn't. Linda said. Lorraine said it lapsed. I looked at my mother. She was pale as a sheet. I have the files. Mom, I said, I pulled them from the public record. Grandpa had a Gold Plus policy with State Farm. It paid out $3,000 a month for his care. And he had his pension. And he had Social Security. I looked back at Linda. His care was fully covered. Linda, if you were writing checks to Mom, they weren't going to the nursing home. Linda stood up. She looked at her sister. Lorraine? Lorraine backed away. You don't understand, she said. There were other expenses. The house, the taxes. The house was paid off, Uncle Mike said, his voice dropping an octave. We paid the taxes on the warehouse property too. You said the estate was cash poor. The warehouse? I asked. I had never heard of a warehouse. Lorraine's eyes darted around the room. She was like a trapped animal. Stop it, she screamed. Stop listening to her. She is sick. She is twisting everything. She lunged for the coffee table. She grabbed the recording phones. I am ending this, she yelled. Get out of my house. Stella, get out. I didn't move. The warehouse. I said to Uncle Mike, Where is it? On Docker Street, Mike said, staring at his sister-in-law with a dawning look of horror. The old storage facility. Lorraine said we had to pay the property tax or the city would seize it. I wrote a check for $4,000 last month. I looked at my mother. Grandpa sold the business assets 12 years ago. I said, if there is still a warehouse, it belongs to the trust. E.J. Legacy Holdings. I turned to the room. There is a trust. I said, Mom is the beneficiary. But only if she doesn't steal. If she steals, she loses it. That's why she is panicking. That's why she wants me to say the check is fake. Because if I claim the money, I trigger an audit. And if there is an audit, you are all going to find out where your $500 a month went. Lorraine was shaking. She looked at her husband. Harry, make her leave. My father stood up. He walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. I flinched, expecting him to shove me. Go. Stella, he said softly. Dad, just go, he said. You did what you came to do. I looked at his face. There was no anger there, just shame. Deep, crushing shame. He knew. He had always known. I turned and walked to the door. You are dead to me, my mother screamed after me. Do you hear me? You are out of the will. You are out of this family. I walked out onto the porch. The cool night air hit my face. I felt lightheaded. I had dropped the match. The bridge was burning. I walked to my car. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my keys. I picked them up and got inside. I locked the doors. I sat there for a moment, watching the house. I could see shadows moving in the living room. I could see Uncle Mike gesturing wildly. I could see Aunt Linda crying. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick. It was a tragedy. A greedy, petty, small tragedy. My phone pinged. I looked down, expecting a text from Sarah or a threat from my mother. It was an email notification from a service I had subscribed to years ago and forgotten about. A generic identity protection alert. Alert. County Recorder Activity. A document request was processed in your name at the Wayne County Recorder of Deeds office. Time, 4:45 p.m. Document requested. Property deed. 882 Docker Street. Requester. Stella Jenkins. I stared at the screen. I hadn't requested a deed. I was at work at 4:45 p.m. Someone had gone to the county office. Someone had claimed to be me. Someone had pulled the records for the warehouse Uncle Mike mentioned. My mother was at home preparing for the ambush. It wasn't her, but she had an accomplice. The authorized signers included her mother, and unexpectedly, someone else. I put the car in gear. I wasn't safe yet. The secrets were spilling out. But now, someone was trying to get ahead of the audit. Someone was trying to steal the property before I could lock it down. And they were using my name to do it. I drove into the dark, watching my rearview mirror, wondering who else was in the game. The notification on my phone screen glowed like a radioactive warning in the dark cab of my car. Requester. Stella Jenkins. I stared at it until the screen dimmed and went black. Someone was impersonating me. Not just socially, not just in gossip circles, but legally. They were walking into government offices, signing my name, and pulling deeds to property I didn't even know existed until an hour ago. I dialed Mr. Gentry immediately. It was 8 o'clock at night. But he answered on the second ring. Gentry, he said, it's Stella. Someone is at the county recorder's office, or they were, at 4:45. They requested the deed for the warehouse on Docker Street, and they did it in my name. I heard the rustle of paper on his end, the scratch of a pen. Did you get a transaction number? He asked. Yes, I read it off to him. Okay, listen to me, Gentry said, his voice shedding its usual gravelly tiredness and becoming sharp. This is not just identity theft. This is an attempt to liquefy trust assets before we can freeze them. If they pull the deed, they might try to execute a quick claim transfer. They are trying to sell the building out from under the trust. Who is doing it? I asked. Mom was at the house. I saw her. She has a proxy. Gentry said, someone she trusts enough to commit a felony with her. We need to trace the mailing address for the certified copy. The recorder's office will mail the physical deed to the address on the request form. If we find that address, we find the accomplice. I will handle the fraud alert. He continued, I will put a block on the title first thing in the morning. You go home. Lock your door. And Stella? Yes? Don't answer your phone. If they are making moves this aggressive, they are panicked. Panicked people are dangerous. I drove home, taking a different route than usual, checking my mirrors. It felt melodramatic, like I was living in a spy novel. but the adrenaline making my hands shake was very real. When I got to my apartment, I didn't turn on the main lights. I sat in the glow of my laptop and logged into the county portal. I paid the $20 expedite fee to view the scanned request form. It downloaded. I opened the PDF. There was my name, printed in block letters, Stella Jenkins, and the signature. It was a good forgery. It had the right loop on the S, the right slant. But the J was too sharp. My J was rounder. I looked at the address field. It wasn't my apartment. It wasn't my parents' house. It was 422 Cedar Lane, Unit B. I knew that address. I had sent Christmas cards there for my mother for a decade. It was Karen's house, Karen Miller, my mother's best friend since high school, the woman who had taught me how to make pie crust, the woman who always told me I was so smart and independent. Karen was the accomplice. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't just my mother acting alone in a fit of grief. This was a conspiracy. My mother had recruited her friends to help her rob the estate and frame her daughter. The next morning, the peace offer arrived. It came via email with a high-priority flag. The subject line was Family Settlement Proposal. Confidential. It was from Pendergrass, my mother's attorney. I opened the attachment. It was 5 pages long. I read it while drinking black coffee that tasted like battery acid. Settlement agreement and mutual release. Whereas, a misunderstanding has arisen regarding the distribution of certain assets. Whereas, the parties desire to resolve this matter privately to preserve family harmony. I skipped to the terms. 1. Stella Jenkins agrees to return the sum of $20,000 to the estate of Harry Jenkins immediately. 2. Stella Jenkins acknowledges that the check was issued in error and makes no claim to any further assets, trusts, or holdings. 3. Stella Jenkins agrees to sign a statement retracting any allegations of fraud or mismanagement against the executor. 4. In exchange, the estate agrees to pay Stella Jenkins a one-time care gift of $5,000 and agrees not to pursue criminal charges for the unauthorized deposit. It was a masterpiece of manipulation. If I signed this, I would be admitting I stole the money. I would be legally documenting that I was a liar. And in exchange, they would give me a fraction of what was already mine and agree not to jail me for a crime I didn't commit. It was designed to destroy my credibility forever. If I ever tried to speak up later, they would just pull out this document signed by my own hand, admitting I was confused and greedy. I forwarded it to Gentry with a single line. No. Then I got in my car. I needed to understand the root of this. Why? Why was my mother, a woman who prided herself on her image, risking prison to steal a warehouse? Why was she shaking down her own sister for $500 a month? I went back to Marcus Sterling. The old man was sitting on his porch this time, wrapped in a thick wool blanket despite the mild weather. He watched me walk up the driveway with sad, knowing eyes. "You found the warehouse, didn't you?" he asked before I even reached the steps. I sat down on the porch swing opposite him. "They tried to steal the deed last night." I said, "Karen Miller forged my signature." Marcus sighed, a long, rattling sound that seemed to deflate his small frame. "Karen. She always did what Lorraine told her. She probably thinks she is helping a widow in distress." "Mr. Sterling," I said, "I need to know the truth. Not the vague version, the specific version. Why did Grandpa take the business away from her?" Marcus looked out at the street. He remained silent for a long time. "It started about 15 years ago," he said. "The market was soft. We were having cash flow problems, just normal business cycles. But Lorraine, she couldn't handle the dips. She liked the lifestyle. Stella. She liked the country club membership. She liked the new cars. She liked being the benevolent matriarch who paid for everyone's dinners." He turned to look at me. She started writing checks to herself. She called them management fees, but she wasn't managing anything. She was just moving numbers. She would bill the company for repairs that never happened. She would bill for consulting from shell companies. "How much?" I asked. "Over 4 years?" Marcus said. "About $400,000. I gasped. $400,000. She drained the operating capital. Marcus continued. We couldn't pay the vendors. We couldn't pay the contractors. I went to Harry. I showed him the books. I thought he would fire her. I thought he would call the police. But he didn't. I said, no. He cried. He sat in his office and cried for 3 hours. He blamed himself. He said he had spoiled her. He said he had taught her that money was love, and so she took the money to feel loved. So he covered it up. I said, he liquidated the company. Marcus said, he sold the big commercial lots. He used that money to pay off the debts she created. He paid me out, and what was left? The warehouse, a few bonds, the cash. He put into the AHJ Legacy Trust, and he made himself trustee. I said, remembering the documents, yes, he put her on an allowance, $2,000 a month, just enough to supplement Harry's pension, but not enough to live like a queen. He thought if he controlled the tap, she would learn. He thought he could discipline her into being honest, but she didn't learn. I said, Marcus shook his head. No, she just got better at hiding it. She started borrowing. She took out a second mortgage on the house. She maxed out credit cards. She borrowed from your aunt and uncle. She built a house of cards. Stella, waiting for Harry to die so she could get the trust and pay it all off. And then he died, I said. And he left the trust to me. He left the control to you, Marcus corrected. If you look at the papers, she is still the beneficiary of the income, but you are the trustee. You see the books, you sign the checks, and if I see the books, I see the theft. Exactly. She isn't fighting you because she hates you. Stella, she is fighting you because she is bankrupt. If she can't sell that warehouse, the house of cards falls. She loses the house. She loses the car. She loses the status. She becomes ordinary, poor, and to Lorraine, that is worse than death. I sat there, processing the tragedy of it. My mother wasn't an evil mastermind. She was a desperate addict. Her drug was status, and she had burned down the whole family to keep getting her fix. Marcus reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a flash drive. I kept copies, he said, emails where she admitted it, the adjusted ledgers, the bank statements from the shell companies. I kept them as insurance in case the IRS ever came for me. He held it out. If you use this, he said, she goes to jail, not for the check, for the embezzlement. The statute of limitations hasn't run out on the fraud she committed against the new trust. I took the drive. It felt heavy in my hand. Cold metal. I don't want to put her in jail. Mr. Sterling, she is my mother. Marcus looked at me with pity. She tried to put you in a mental institution. Stella, she tried to frame you for a felony. She doesn't have the same reservations about you. I drove away with the flash drive in my purse. I struggled with it all afternoon. I sat in a park, watching kids play on the swings. I thought about the mother who had braided my hair, the mother who had made my prom dress. Was that real? Or was that just another performance? I realized then that the insanity narrative she had planted wasn't just a tactic, it was a projection. She was the one living in a fantasy world where she was rich and perfect. She was the one denying reality. By calling me crazy, she was trying to transfer her own sickness onto me. If I let her win, I wasn't saving her. I was enabling her. I was letting her continue the lie that was eating her alive. My phone buzzed. It was an email notification. Sender, Vance Associates. CP as, subject, Notice of Pending Integrity Memorandum Release. I froze. I opened the email. Dear Ms. Jenkins, as the independent accountant designated in the HJ Legacy Holdings Trust, I am writing to inform you that a trigger event has been logged. We have received notification of an unauthorized attempt to access trust assets, property ID 882 Docker Street, by a party other than the trustee. Under the terms of the Trust's Integrity Clause, this action constitutes interference. Unless a sworn affidavit of error is received within 48 hours, the Integrity Memorandum, containing the decedent's statement regarding prior financial misconduct, will be automatically released to all beneficiaries and legal counsel. Current status: pending. Time to release. 47 hours, 12 minutes. Grandpa. He had built a doomsday machine. He knew she would try to steal the warehouse. He knew she would try to bypass the rules. So he had rigged the system. If she touched the assets, the truth came out automatically. He had engineered accountability from the grave. I looked at the countdown. 47 hours. If that memo came out, it was over. The family would know everything. The family loans scam would be exposed. Her reputation would be incinerated. I could let it happen. I could just sit here and wait, and in 2 days, the bomb would go off. But if I did that, she would say I did it. She would say I maliciously released it to hurt her. She would play the victim one last time. No, I needed to end this on my terms. I decided to stop playing defense. I was done hiding in my apartment. I was done dodging phone calls. I called Uncle Mike. He answered on the first ring. He sounded tired. Stella? Look, your mother is really upset. Uncle Mike, I cut him off. I am not calling to argue. I am calling to invite you to a meeting. A meeting? Yes. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. At the library. I rented a conference room. The library? Stella, why can't we just come to the house? Because the house is compromised. I said, bring Aunt Linda. Bring Sarah. Bring Dad. Stella, your mother is not going to come to a library. I know. I said, that's why I'm inviting you. I have documents to show you. Mike? Real ones. Not stories. I have the trust instrument. I have the bank records. And I have the timeline of where your $500 a month actually went. There was a silence on the line. You know where the money went? He asked, his voice low. I do. I said, and you need to see it before the integrity memo is released on Friday. Because once that memo comes out, the IRS gets involved. The IRS? Mike sounded panicked. Just come. Mike, 7 o'clock. I hung up. I knew what would happen next. Mike would call Linda. Linda would call my mother. My mother would realize she was losing control of the audience. 20 minutes later, the group text pinged, the one I had been removed from. Apparently, I had been re-added. Lorraine Jenkins created group Family Healing. Lorraine. My darlings, I am so thrilled to announce that we are going to have a special reconciliation dinner tomorrow night at the Italian place downtown. 7 o'clock. It is our anniversary, and Stella has agreed to come and join us to make things right. No library meetings, just good food and family love. Please everyone come to support Stella in her apology. I stared at the screen. She had hijacked my time slot. She had hijacked the narrative. She was positioning it as a reconciliation where I was coming to apologize. She was forcing me into a public setting where I couldn't show documents, where I couldn't make a scene without looking like the crazy person she claimed I was, if I refused to go. I looked unreasonable, if I went. I was walking into a trap. I typed a reply. I will be there. I wasn't going to apologize. I was going to testify. I spent the next day preparing. I felt like a lawyer preparing for the trial of the century. I went to Kinko's. I printed 5 copies of the trust timeline. I printed the email from the accountant about the integrity memo. I printed the fraud alert from the county recorder showing the forged signature. I put them in black binders. Then I called Mr. Vance, the accountant. Mr. Vance, this is Stella Jenkins. Mrs. Jenkins, I cannot stop the countdown without a court order, he said immediately. I don't want you to stop it. I said, I want you to attend a dinner. Excuse me? Virtually. I said, I am going to have my iPad on the table. I need you to be on Zoom at 7:30. I need you to verify one thing for my family. What is that? That the integrity memo is real, and that it triggers in 48 hours. Vance paused. Ms. Jenkins, that is highly irregular. Mr. Vance, my mother is currently soliciting funds from family members based on false pretenses regarding this estate. If you don't help me clarify the situation, there will be more victims before the memo releases. Fine, Vance said. I will log on. 7:30. I put on my armor. I wore a black dress. Simple, sharp, no jewelry. I pulled my hair back. I wanted to look severe. I wanted to look sober. I drove to the restaurant. It was a place with white tablecloths and heavy curtains. The kind of place my mother loved because the waiters called her Signora. I walked into the private dining room in the back. They were all there. My father, looking small in his suit. Uncle Mike, looking suspicious. Aunt Linda, looking hopeful. Sarah, looking down at her lap. And my mother. She was wearing a red dress. She looked triumphant. She was holding a glass of champagne. "Stella," she cried, opening her arms as if she hadn't screamed that I was dead to her 3 days ago. "Look who decided to rejoin the family." I didn't hug her. I walked to the empty seat at the end of the table. I placed my stack of black binders on the white tablecloth. The thud they made was heavy, solid. I sat down. "I'm glad you all came," I said. "Stella," Aunt Linda said, reaching for my hand. "We are just so glad you are better." I pulled my hand away. "I'm not better, Linda," I said, "because I wasn't sick." The room stiffened. Lorraine's smile faltered. "Now, Stella," she said, her voice tightening. "We agreed. Tonight is about moving forward. Tonight is about putting the unpleasantness behind us." She clapped her hands. "And to help us do that, I have a surprise." She gestured to the door. A man walked in. He was tall, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than my car. He carried a leather briefcase. It was Alan Pendergrass, her lawyer. I realized then what this was. It wasn't a dinner. It was a deposition. "Mr. Pendergrass," Lorraine exclaimed, feigning surprise. "What a coincidence." "Alan," Uncle Mike said, confused. "What are you doing here?" Mr. Pendergrass smiled, a shark-like baring of teeth. "Lorraine invited me, Mike. She thought it would be helpful to have a neutral third party here to facilitate the agreement." He looked at me. He placed a document on the table in front of me. It was the settlement agreement, the one I had rejected. "Good evening, Ms. Jenkins," Pendergrass said smoothly. "I understand you are ready to sign the retraction so we can release the care gift?" The trap snapped shut. She had brought a lawyer to intimidate me in front of the family. She was banking on the social pressure, the anniversary vibe, the public setting. She thought I would crumble. She thought I would sign just to make the awkwardness stop. I looked at the document. Then I looked at my mother. She was watching me with eyes that were hard as flint. "Sign it," her eyes said. "Sign it, or I destroy you." I looked at my watch. 7:25. I reached into my bag and pulled out my iPad. I set it up on the table. Propping it against the water pitcher. "What is that?" Pendergrass asked. I didn't answer. I looked at the family. I brought a guest, too. I said. I tapped the screen. The Zoom call connected. A face appeared on the screen. A serious man with glasses and a bookshelf behind him. "Who is that?" my mother demanded, her voice rising. "This is Mr. Vance," I said calmly. "Mr. Vance?" Uncle Mike asked. "Who is Mr. Vance?" I looked at Pendergrass. He had gone pale. He knew who Mr. Vance was. "Mr. Vance," I said to the screen. "Can you hear me?" "Yes, Ms. Jenkins," the voice came through the speakers, loud and clear. "Can you please introduce yourself to the room? I am Arthur Vance, certified public accountant." The voice said, "I am the independent trustee and auditor for the ANJ Legacy Holdings Trust." My mother dropped her champagne glass. It shattered on the tile floor. An explosion of crystal and liquid. But nobody looked at the mess. Everyone was looking at the screen. "And Mr. Vance," I continued, "can you tell us what happens in 46 hours? "Yes," Vance said. "In 46 hours, the integrity memorandum authored by the late Harry Jenkins will be released to all beneficiaries due to a logged interference event." "Interference event?" Uncle Mike asked. "What does that mean?" "It means," Vance said, his voice flat and factual, "that someone attempted to use a forged signature to remove a deed from the trust." The room went deadly silent. I opened the black binders. I slid one to Uncle Mike. I slid one to my father. I slid one to Pendergrass. I didn't slide one to my mother. She knew what was in it. "I think we should order appetizers," I said. "We have a lot of reading to do." The shattered champagne glass lay on the floor. a jagged island of crystal and foam in the middle of the private dining room. The waiter, a young man with terrified eyes, hovered in the doorway, unsure if he should rush in with a broom or call the police. My mother, Lorraine, stared at the iPad screen where Mr. Vance's face hovered, impassive and professional. Her face had drained of color, leaving her makeup standing out in stark, artificial relief. Mr. Pendergrass, the attorney she had brought to ambush me, cleared his throat. It was a wet, nervous sound. Mr. Vance, Pendergrass said, trying to regain the authority he had walked in with. I was not aware that the H.J. Legacy Trust had an active independent auditor. My client, Mrs. Jenkins, was under the impression that the trust was a dormant entity. On the screen, Mr. Vance adjusted his glasses. That is incorrect. Mr. Vance said, the trust has been active for 12 years. It requires monthly reconciliation, and as of yesterday, it is in a state of high alert due to the attempted unauthorized transfer of the Docker Street property. Lorraine turned to the family. She forced a laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. This is ridiculous, she said. She looked at Aunt Linda. She looked at my father. Do you see what she is doing? She has hired an actor. She has set up some kind of deep fake video to confuse you. This is exactly what I was talking about. This is the paranoia. She reached out and grabbed Aunt Linda's hand. Linda, please, she said, her voice dropping to a theatrical whisper. We have to be strong for her. We have to support Stella while she gets help. She is unwell. She is creating elaborate fantasies to hurt us because she is in pain. I watched her. It was fascinating, in a horrific way. She was drowning, and her instinct wasn't to swim. It was to pull everyone else down with her. She was using the exact script I had heard on the voicemail. Support her while she gets help. It was a code for discredit her until she is silenced. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I felt a strange, cold calm settle over me, the kind of calm that comes after the worst has already happened. I looked at my father. He was staring at the tablecloth, his hands gripping his knees. I looked at Uncle Mike. He was looking at the black binder I had slid in front of him, but he hadn't opened it yet. Mom, I said. She snapped her head toward me. Stop it, Stella. I will not let you ruin your father's anniversary with this performance. I looked at the group. I am asking for 5 minutes. I said. Lorraine opened her mouth to interrupt. Just 5 minutes, I repeated, my voice steady. You invited me here to talk. You invited Mr. Pendergrass here to witness a settlement. If I am really crazy, if I am really hallucinating, then letting me speak for 5 minutes won't change anything. You can all just nod and then take me to the hospital. I looked at Pendergrass. Is that fair? Mr. Pendergrass? 5 minutes for the opposing party to present their case? Pendergrass looked at Lorraine. He saw the panic in her eyes, but he also saw the iPad. He saw the binder in front of him. He was a lawyer, and self-preservation was kicking in. I think, Pendergrass said slowly, I think that is a reasonable request. Lorraine looked betrayed. Alan, let her speak. Lorraine, Uncle Mike said. His voice was heavy. He put his hand on the cover of the binder. Let's hear it. Thank you, I said. I opened my own binder. Page 1. I said. I waited until Uncle Mike and Pendergrass opened theirs. My father didn't move. Sarah, my cousin, leaned over to look at Mike's copy. This is the cashier's check. I said, dated October 3rd, issued by First National Bank. Amount, $20,000. I pointed to the image. Mom told you it was a prop. I continued. She told you it was a fake check Grandpa carried around to feel important. She told you I was humiliated at the bank. I turned the page. Page 2. This is the deposit receipt from October 4th, and this is the transaction record from my online banking, dated yesterday, showing the funds are still there. I looked at Aunt Linda. Banks do not clear prop checks. Linda. They do not hold funds for 10 days if they are counterfeit. If I was hallucinating, this money would not exist. But it does. Lorraine scoffed. You probably printed that off the internet. You can fake anything these days. I ignored her. Page 3. I said. The room turned the page. This is the letter I received from Mr. Pendergrass's office 3 days ago. I said, it demands the return of potential estate documents. I looked at Pendergrass. Mr. Pendergrass, in this letter, you threaten legal action for misappropriation, but you don't specify what was misappropriated. You don't list the check number. You don't list the trust name. I didn't have the file at the time, Pendergrass muttered, shifting in his seat. Exactly. I said, because Mom didn't give you the file. She just told you to scare me. I turned the page again. Page 4. This is a photocopy of a document that was slipped under my apartment door. I said, it is the First Amendment to the H.J. Legacy Holdings Trust. It names me as successor trustee. I saw Pendergrass stiffen. He leaned in, reading the text. This, he murmured. I haven't seen this. I know. I said, Mom didn't give you this either, because this document proves that Grandpa didn't trust her to manage the assets. Lorraine stood up. That is a forgery, she shouted. She wrote that herself. Harry loved me. He trusted me with everything. Sit down. Lorraine, Uncle Mike barked. It was the first time I had ever heard him speak to her like that. It wasn't friendly. It was the voice of a man who was starting to realize he had been played. Lorraine froze. She looked at Mike, stunned. Then she slowly sank back into her chair. Page 5, I said. This was the smoking gun. This is a transaction log from the Wayne County Recorder of Deeds, dated 2 days ago, time 4:45 in the afternoon. I pointed to the highlighted line. Someone requested the deed for the property at 882 Docker Street, the warehouse. They signed my name, Stella Jenkins. I looked at my mother. I was at work at 4:45. I said, I have a time-stamped email to prove it, but the request asked for the deed to be mailed to a specific address. I read the address aloud. 422 Cedar Lane, Unit B. Aunt Linda gasped. That's Karen's house. Karen Miller. I said, Mom's best friend. I looked at Uncle Mike. Mike, you said you have been writing checks for $500 a month to pay the taxes on the warehouse. You said Mom told you the estate was cash poor and the city was going to seize the building. Yes, Mike said. His face was turning a dark, dangerous red. I turned to page 6. This is the tax record for 882 Docker Street. I said, the property taxes are paid automatically by the AMOJ, Legacy Holdings Trust. They have been paid in full, on time, for 12 years. The account has a balance of over $50,000 in cash reserves specifically for maintenance. I watched the realization hit Mike like a physical blow. Wait, Mike said. He looked at Lorraine. You said there was no money. You said the warehouse was underwater. Lorraine was shaking her head frantically. There were other costs. Mike, you don't understand commercial real estate. There are fees. I turned to the final page. And this, I said, is the email from Mr. Vance. I pointed to the screen where Mr. Vance was still watching, a silent judge. The email confirms that an interference event has occurred. I said, it confirms that because someone, Mom, with Karen's help, tried to steal the deed using a forged signature, the trust's penalty clause has been activated. Pendergrass looked up from the binder. He looked at me, then at the screen, then at his client, Mrs. Jenkins. Pendergrass said, his voice ice-cold. Did you ask Ms. Miller to impersonate your daughter? Lorraine didn't answer. She grabbed her napkin and twisted it in her hands. I didn't tell her to do that. She stammered. I just told her I needed the deed. I told her Stella was holding it hostage. Karen must have misunderstood. You are throwing Karen under the bus? I asked. Just like you threw me? I looked at the table. That is the timeline. I said, that is the evidence. I am not hallucinating. I am not unstable. I am just the person who caught you. The room was silent. The only sound was the hum of the HVAC system and the soft clinking of silverware from the main dining room, a world away from our disaster. Then Pendergrass stood up. He closed his briefcase. Mrs. Jenkins, he said, I am terminating my representation effective immediately. What? Lorraine gasped. You can't leave. You have to fix this. I cannot fix fraud, Mrs. Jenkins, Pendergrass said, and I certainly cannot be a party to a conspiracy to defraud a trust. I will be sending you a letter confirming my withdrawal. Do not contact my office. He looked at me. He nodded, a sharp, respectful dip of his chin. Ms. Jenkins. He walked out. The door closing behind him sounded like a gunshot. Lorraine looked around the table. Her support system was gone. Her lawyer was gone. Her narrative was shredded. She looked at my father. Harry, say something, she shrieked. Tell them how hard I work. Tell them I did it for us. My father finally looked up. His eyes were wet. You did it for yourself. Lorraine, he whispered. Lorraine recoiled. How dare you, she hissed. After everything I do, I keep this family running. I make sure we have the right clothes, the right parties, the right image. Do you think that is free? Do you think that just happens? She stood up, her red dress rustling. I did what I had to do. Grandpa was a fool. He was going to let that money sit in a bank account while we scraped by? While I had to shop at discount stores? It was my inheritance. It was mine. She wasn't crying. She was snarling. The mask had fallen completely. She wasn't the concerned mother anymore. She was the hungry ghost who had been eating us alive for years. I reached into my bag for the last item. The envelope was old. The paper was yellowed. It was the letter I had received from Marcus Sterling, the one Grandpa had left in the backup safety deposit box. I have one more thing. I said. Lorraine froze. She looked at the envelope. She recognized the handwriting. No, she whispered. I opened it. This is a letter from Grandpa. I said, he wrote it 4 years ago. It was to be given to me only if you tried to challenge the trust. I started to read. My dearest Stella, if you are reading this, it means I have failed. It means I couldn't protect your mother from her own worst instincts, and now you are in the line of fire. I want you to know the truth. I didn't sell the business because I wanted to retire. I sold it because your mother embezzled $400,000 from the operating accounts. Uncle Mike gasped. 400,000? I continued reading. She called them management fees. She justified it by saying she deserved it. When I confronted her, she didn't apologize. She told me I owed it to her. I loved my daughter. I couldn't bear to send her to prison. So I paid the debts. I covered her tracks. But I knew I couldn't trust her with the rest of the estate. I knew that if she had access to the principal, she would spend it all in 5 years and leave your grandmother with nothing. So I created the HJ Legacy Trust. It was designed to keep her safe from herself, but I knew she would hate it. I knew she would try to break it, and I knew she would try to bully you if she thought you stood in her way. She is not evil. Stella, she is broken. She has a hole in her heart that she tries to fill with things, but you cannot let her fill it with your future. Stand firm. Do not let her make you doubt your own mind. You are the strongest one of us. You are the one who can finally say no. Love. Grandpa. I folded the letter. Lorraine was standing perfectly still. Her hands were clenched at her sides. He was a liar, she said. Her voice was flat. Dead. He was a senile, hateful old man who wanted to control me from the grave. He never loved me. He only loved you. She looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. You are just like him, she spat. Selfish, cold. You think you are better than me? You think you are smart because you found some papers? She grabbed her purse. I want my money. Stella, I want that warehouse. I want the cash. If you don't sign that release, I will sue you until you are homeless. I will tell everyone you abused me. I will ruin you. I looked at the iPad. Mr. Vance was still watching. Mr. Vance, I said, did you hear that? Yes. Mrs. Jenkins, Vance said. I heard the threat. And under the terms of the trust? I asked. Under the terms of the trust, Vance said, his voice booming through the quiet room. A threat of litigation against the trustee by a beneficiary is grounds for immediate suspension of that beneficiary's income payments. Lorraine's eyes went wide. What? She whispered. I am suspending your monthly distribution effective immediately, Mrs. Jenkins, Vance said, pending a full audit of the estate. And given the evidence of fraud regarding the warehouse deed, I will be forwarding this file to the district attorney's office on Monday morning. Lorraine looked at the screen. She looked at Pendergrass's empty chair. She looked at Uncle Mike, who was staring at her with disgust. No, she whimpered. You can't. That is my money. I have bills. I have the mortgage. Not anymore. I said. I stood up. I'm not going to sue you. Mom, I'm not going to ruin you. I'm just going to let the consequences happen. I picked up my binders. I am keeping the $20,000. I said, I am going to use it to pay Mr. Gentry to enforce every single word of Grandpa's trust. I am going to order a forensic audit of every dime you handled for Grandma and Grandpa in the last 10 years. I looked at Uncle Mike. And Mike, if I find out she took your money for bills that didn't exist, the trust will reimburse you. Mike put his head in his hands. Lorraine looked around the room. She was searching for a handle, a lever, anything she could pull to stop the collapse. You can't do this to me, she pleaded. I am your mother. She looked at my father. Harry, stop her. My father stood up. He looked tired. He looked older than he had an hour ago. He walked over to me. I braced myself. He reached out and touched my arm. Do you need a ride home? Stella? He asked. The silence that followed was absolute. It was the sound of a 40-year dynamic shattering. Lorraine stared at him. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I have my car. Dad, I said. He nodded. Good. Drive safe. He turned and walked toward the door. He didn't look at Lorraine. Lorraine let out a sound that was half scream, half sob. Fine, she yelled. Leave, all of you. I don't need you. She turned to me, her eyes wild. You think you won? She screamed. You think you are special? You are nothing. You are a traitor. I am cutting you off. Stella, do you hear me? I am cutting you off forever. You will never step foot in my house again. You will never see me again. I looked at her, really looked at her. I saw the fear behind the rage. I saw the smallness of her. You can't cut me off. Mom, I said quietly. Why? Because you have the money? She sneered. No, I said, because you already did. You cut me off the day you decided to tell everyone I was crazy instead of admitting you were wrong. You cut me off when you tried to steal my identity. You didn't just burn the bridge. Mom, you blew up the cliff. I turned my back on her. Stella, she screamed. Come back here. I am talking to you. I walked out of the private dining room. I walked through the main restaurant. People were eating pasta. A couple was toasting with wine. They looked so normal. They had no idea that in the back room, a family had just detonated. I stepped out into the night air. It was crisp. It smelled of rain and city exhaust. I walked to the curb. I was shaking. My hands were trembling so hard, I had to squeeze the binders against my chest to keep from dropping them. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt sick, hollowed out, like I had survived a car crash. But the fog was gone. The gaslighting was over. The doubt was gone. I knew what was real. I knew who I was. Behind me, the door to the restaurant banged open. Uncle Mike stormed out, his phone to his ear, shouting something about canceling a check. Aunt Linda followed him, weeping. I didn't look back. I walked to my car, unlocked the door, and got in. I sat there for a long time, watching the streetlights blur through my own tears. Then, I started the engine. I had a meeting with Mr. Vance on Monday. I had a trust to run. I had a life to build. And for the first time in 33 years, it was going to be mine. Thank you so much for listening to Don't Embarrass Yourself with That Prop. Mom said Grandpa's $20,000 check was fake, so I deposited it. I hope you enjoyed this journey of truth and vindication. I would love to hear your thoughts on Stella's decision. Did she do the right thing by exposing the secrets, or was the cost too high? Please leave a comment down below, letting me know where you are listening from in the world. It is always amazing to see how far these stories travel. If you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to the Revenge Stories channel so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay safe and trust your instincts.